Tonight is stormwater for sure, so any and all stormwater issues are certainly welcome. And I want to welcome everybody to our meeting tonight. I'm Ron Feldner. I am the Chief of Water Resources, so that's water, sewer, stormwater management. We've got an abundance of staff here who are here to support us tonight. Water conservation, education, capital projects, and then our friends in the back in the middle there are doing some of our database work on stormwater bills, impervious area coverage in the community. We're going to talk about all that today a little bit more. But I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and spending some time to hear us talk about what we're doing with regard to drainage issues in the city. It was a challenging summer for sure. Last year was a challenging year because we had a couple of tropical storms come through. Fortunately, we were blessed to not have the tropical storms this year, but we know that rainfall is something that we're continuing to deal with regularly. So our program here tonight talks first about this overview that I'm going to provide here, and then once again time to talk to our staff members that are here regarding some of the different programs and additional details that they can offer. Timeline of what we've been doing. Project's been going on since August of last year, and we have been evaluating and studying our stormwater program, how we're performing services in the community, addressing the issues that citizens have. We've also been analyzing what it costs to do all that. And not surprisingly, the more financial resources that we put into the program, the better the work output is, and our staff can attest to that with some of the work that's been going on this year. But we've been doing a lot of things this year, and we're rolling up to a city council budget retreat on Monday of next week. We'll talk a little bit more about the Stormwater Utility, and then we'll also move into, I think that's later on, November 25th, there'll be a city council workshop where we'll talk about stormwater management in a lot of detail at the 11 o'clock session before we do some formal meeting issues at 2 o'clock on Tuesday the 25th. So we've got a lot of things that we've been working on for the last year, and there's still a lot more work to do, and the city council certainly has a big responsibility to process all this information that we're going to share with them from our 12 or 15 months worth of work in the coming weeks. So talking first of all about what it is the stormwater program does at the city, three big areas: operations and maintenance, regulatory compliance, and capital construction. All of them affect the community, but as citizens, obviously system maintenance and capital projects to keep you from flooding is what you deal with mostly when you're moving around the city. Regulatory kind of happens in the background, but it's very important because we have to remain in compliance with our state and federal permits. We've got a lot of infrastructure. My trivia question, I say, is if you drove north on 95, how far could you get with the number of pipe system miles we have in the city of Savannah? The answer is Richmond, Virginia. 416 miles worth of pipes. That'll take you to Richmond, Virginia on I-95. So you can see we've got a lot of infrastructure here, and that infrastructure has to be maintained and operated by the city staff, and some of our excellent maintenance staff are here in the room over here on the right, do a tremendous job, but it's a big challenge. And the resources that they put into it certainly provide a service to us all, but the additional resources that we're seeking and proposing are going to make their operation even more successful and better. The capital project side, where we deal with flood control and reducing flooding in neighborhoods, is broken up into the pump stations and the small neighborhood projects. Pipe repair is a big deal. We've got a lot of old infrastructure in the city of Savannah. 50, 100-year-old pipe systems easily around the city. They require a lot of repair work because of the age and the condition that they're in due to deterioration over time. Analyzing and modeling our drainage basins is really important because that's where we plan our work. We have to plan the work before we go ahead and put a project in the ground and execute on those studies and what the outcomes are. And then the big drainage projects, we're going to talk more about those. Those are the Casey Canal projects. Those are the Bilbo Canal projects, the large projects that we work on a regular basis, mainly because of our SPLOST funding. stormwater utility is a concept that we have been talking about at the city for many years. Obviously, this has picked up a lot of momentum in the last 15 months. And why we're here tonight is to talk about how this concept can be utilized in combination with what we're already doing with the general fund in terms of taxation, but also what we're doing with special purpose local option sales tax, which is the penny tax that we just voted on a week or so ago to once again provide additional large-scale funding for the drainage projects around the city that I believe the total is about $60 million in SPLOST 8, dedicated exclusively to drainage. But SPLOST money, as we'll find out later in the presentation, can't be used for maintenance. So it doesn't support the maintenance operation of the city staff. So the stormwater utility is going to play a big role in maintaining all that infrastructure from that previous slide. The city operates 3 pipe systems. We've talked about this before in the past, and those 3 pipe systems are the water and sewer, which are traditional. We've been operating a water and sewer system through user fees and dedicated funding for greater than 50 years. And that system works extremely well. The enterprise fund of water and sewer is the accounting and finance framework for how we collect the revenue for water and sewer services and then reinvest that and pay for the services that relate to water and sewer. So that model has been working real well for us, obviously, for many years. It's very common throughout the state and the country. And we want to replicate that in stormwater, because right now stormwater does not have a dedicated system of funding. Once again, it's a blended concept where general fund taxation, SPLOST money, and other funding of that nature comes in to create the funding mechanism for it. And we want to utilize the same concept as water and sewer now for stormwater with the user fee system. So once again, the stormwater utility overview. Paying a fee for the service, once again, using that utility model. The funding is dedicated exclusively to stormwater services. So in this case, it comes into what will be a stormwater enterprise fund, like there's a water and sewer enterprise fund, and that money will be then earmarked or identified for exclusive use by the stormwater services operation. It applies to all properties in the community, just like all communities or all properties in the service area pay water and sewer fees. All developed property within the city will pay for stormwater services, just like they do for water and sewer. So it's a concept that's based on this idea that the more runoff you generate, stormwater runoff from rainfall, the larger or the greater your service delivery demand is within the city, and therefore the higher your fee to pay for that service. Here is a typical example of what a residential property would look like in terms of the rooftop, the sidewalk, and the driveway associated with the parcel. And this is about a 2,500 square foot example, which is what our average or median residential parcel looks like in the city through a lot of data analysis we've done. And the fee structure that we're talking about, we'll talk about more here in a minute, deals with how individual residential customers would pay for stormwater services using this equivalent residential unit concept. Now, the residential unit concept is also used in water. So when you pay your connection fees and other water and sewer fees, we also base that on an equivalent residential unit. In the case of water consumption, it's 300 gallons per day. So trying to use a lot of the same terminology here, same rate structure concepts, and once again, tying it back to the residential equivalent. So in the case of a non-residential property, the bill or the fee would be based on the number of increments of equivalent residential units. So if you had equivalent residential units in the water space, it would be 300 gallons per day times the number. That would be the number of units you would have there if you were a restaurant or something of that nature. In the case of a stormwater fee, similar concept, increments of 2,500 square feet. So in this example, 25,000 square feet is 10 increments of 2,500 square foot equivalent residential. So once again, this is the basis for how the rate structure would work in the proposal for non-residential. One thing that's unique about a stormwater fee is that the concept necessitates the incorporation of credits, such that any activity such as a detention pond or a rain garden or something that reduces the amount of runoff impact that your parcel has on the stormwater drainage system of the city, then that is a corresponding reduction in your stormwater fee bill. And that's the logic behind it, that if your demand is reduced by, say, a detention pond or some stormwater control on your property that reduces your contribution of runoff to the system, the city system, your service delivery is reduced and your fee is reduced accordingly. So credits are an important part of the stormwater utility concept, and we're proposing quite an extensive list of credits to be a part of the program. We've got, I think, a summary list of what they are up front here on the front table. You can see that even residential properties with the rain barrel is something that we want to consider as part of our credit offering as well. If you ride around the city, especially in the downtown, midtown area, you see most properties are almost lot line to lot line. So the stormwater management system for those properties, including my own on Gordon Street, is the city drainage system. My gutters point to the street, water comes off my rooftop in my gutters across the sidewalk and into the gutter system. So all the runoff from my property goes into Gordon Street's gutter system, and then the city kind of takes it from there. So that's the service that's provided. That's pretty common in a lot of areas. In some cases, there is some ability to absorb that rainfall on a larger lot, so we've got credits for that as well. Big detention ponds are associated with what we see out at the warehouses and the larger developments. Well, that reduction of runoff contribution to the system would be addressed accordingly as well. So we believe that it's more equitable to utilize a user fee for drainage services than taxation. And that's what this slide gets to here. You can see that this example shows that a $450,000 valued property has a much smaller footprint in terms of square footage than this corresponding commercial property or non-residential property. So in this case, the property that generates a smaller amount of runoff, the residential structure, would actually pay a higher tax bill potentially for contribution to stormwater management drainage services than this other property, which has much greater amount of impervious area and a larger amount of runoff. So obviously, under a stormwater user fee scenario, the property that generates the greater amount of runoff pays the higher fee. And once again, the equity of the system is shown here by these two examples of taxation, assessed value versus impervious area runoff. So once again, we talked about the fact that the detached single-family residential properties would have a tiered system of flat rates. And we're going to talk about that system in more detail in a second. And then non-single family would have a custom bill that was based on the multiples of equivalent residential units that are associated with that non-residential commercial site. The four-tier system is something that we've done a lot of work on, and Mike and Ed in the back of the room have obviously played the key role in that. We've taken all 40,000, that's kind of a number I recall, of the detached single-family residential properties within the city and broken them up into this breakdown in terms of how the median 2,500 number comes back in there where the black line is, and then having these sets of tiers and then setting fees by each tier. So if you've got a small footprint structure, say in West Savannah, you know, you are likely, I don't know if I don't think I have a thing, but anyway, the blue section over there, if you've got a small footprint house, your runoff amount is going to be proportionally less than, say, the green zone houses that might be Ardsley Park. So we felt like putting this flat rate tier system in for the residential properties was a more equitable way to charge customers for stormwater services in the residential customer class. And I think this is something that was important to reference relative to how we're proposing to City Council to set the rate structure up. So once again, this is something that we put a lot of time into to show that this equity is enhanced to the maximum degree we could without going to individual bills for every parcel, which of course would be a very labor-intensive exercise. So what you see here is kind of a breakdown of an actual neighborhood in the city, and you can see the different colors of footprints of residential properties and how they would correspond back to the different tiers. And once again, the gold tier is most common in terms of the midpoint of the breakdown, but you can see how these different properties fall into the different tiers based on their impervious footprint size. And once again, here is a table analysis or display of what we're talking about. And the reason I've highlighted or put an asterisk next to the tier 2 is the 475 rate is what the non-single family residential per ERU rate would be. So we talked earlier about the 10 billing unit or 10 ERU example. It'd be 10 times 4.75. So that only applies to the non-residential in terms of that rate, and then the residential ones are the ones that are broken out in 1, 3, and 4 for the different tiers. City Council was very clear to us as the staff, as we went through this process over the last many months, that the stormwater program needed to enhance its service delivery. And that enhancement was important because citizens, business owners were coming to us and expressing concern about ongoing maintenance needs, deferred maintenance needs, capital project implementation, and how important that was. So enhancement of the level of service is what is a lot of the driving force behind these additional resources in the program through the Stormwater Utility. And some of those examples are here. The current level of service in terms of how we operate is shown there, kind of a reactive, complaint-driven maintenance program. What we want to do is we want to transition that maintenance program that the staff operates to something that's more proactive, so that as the forecasted storms are being predicted for Savannah, the system is maintained and ready to accommodate those intense rainfall events that oftentimes accompany those storms in the summer, and of course any tropical systems. So proactiveness was an important kind of guiding principle to what we were talking about on the maintenance side. Capital projects, the list is large. Tens of millions of dollars of needs in the capital program area. So the importance of getting more financial resources into the stormwater program for capital project implementation is important. And we've got a couple of maps over here that we can talk about as we finish up here with my presentation and we talk to the staff more. All of our projects around the city, various stages of action in terms of completed, proposed. The map over there that's in the middle talks about 6 projects that have been identified for initial implementation if the stormwater utility program moves through next year. Those are kind of the kickoff projects. But then right behind that, this map here is a series of projects totaling about $25 million that are some of the highest priority projects that we have on our list, and those would be moved forward very quickly through an amortized funding plan where the stormwater utility revenue would pay the debt service on that amortized funding mechanism, just like water and sewer revenues pay for amortized funding with water and sewer capital. One thing that we've talked about a lot is that the City Council has been very generous to the city staff when it comes to financial needs, but the variable or episodic nature of how the funding comes in year over year is oftentimes dependent on where there's surpluses of tax revenue, or in the case of 2024, when a tax increase was advanced forward by City Council as part of the annual budget, some of the captured revenue from that tax increase went towards some capital projects and drainage, which we were grateful for. But once again, that funding occurred in connection with there being a tax increase and the millage being held, I think, at the level that it was at. So planning is another issue that's really important. By having a consistent and stable revenue source dedicated to stormwater management, we feel like we can plan our work better and implement a capital program that's systematic. I'm going to talk more about the capital program in a minute in terms of how we're prioritizing and ranking those projects so that you can understand what's going on relative to that internal evaluation of that process. So getting back to the capital projects, you can see we've got quite a large amount of capital needs within the city, and this is through work that's been done already. We've analyzed and modeled about 2/3 of the drainage basins in the city, and through that master planning work, we've generated the capital list. The capital list has a cost, and we are systematically working through it with SPLOST money, which is a big part of it, of course. $60 million of SPLOST and SPLOST 8 voted on November 4th. We just put in about 10 days ago now, a grant to the state of Georgia that totaled $132 million of funding with the hazard mitigation grant program that the state is running right now. It's a competitive process, but we're pursuing that large-scale funding there to, once again, pull together SPLOST, state money, local money, in an effort to try and work away at this capital list, which is extensive. So you can see here how we're breaking up the different capital needs by funding source. And once again, federal grants, in the case of what I talked about, the hazard mitigation program, huge opportunity for us to get some large-scale funding into the program to tackle some of the large projects that we've got planned out and on the books. But any large capital program, like the size that Savannah has, is going to require this blended funding concept of local money, state money, federal money, and of course tax money through SPLOST. So trying to bring all these sources together to make progress on these projects here. I talked earlier about the episodic nature of how we get that supplemental funding in the blue column there. It's stacked on top of the darker shade, which is the operations budget. So you can see that when we've gotten funding in 22 and 24, it was relatively large in size, but once again, it's got that inconsistent aspect to it. So what we're trying to do is get over here to the 2027 and beyond, where stormwater utility revenue is going to come in and provide a consistent, stable level of funding, once again, similar to what we have annually in the water and sewer enterprise fund. We talked a lot about SPLOST 8. Grateful to the voters and the support that we got there. As we said, $60 million of capital money, very important to the ongoing capital needs of the city in the drainage area, as well as transportation and recreation and other areas. So the service delivery enhancements we've talked about, first of all, next year, getting additional personnel and equipment focused on maintenance. Really trying to ramp up the maintenance. We were talking about some of those details, and we're going to share them with City Council in more detail next week on the 17th. Getting the ditch maintenance and canal maintenance crews from 1 crew to 5, because there's so many ditch systems around the city that we need to do a better job of building out our ditch and maintenance crew field operations, because that's where a lot of our problems occur, but of course a lot of our complaints come in too. And ditch maintenance is something that you don't do once a year. It needs to be done multiple times a year if it's going to be effective. So a one-time ditch maintenance exercise isn't going to be sufficient. It's going to have to be hit multiple times a year. We're also going to get some additional jetback trucks, that might be the next slide. You know, these resources are what we dispatch both ahead of storms, during storms, and certainly right after the storms to get the closed systems, pipe systems, catch basins cleaned out. And when these trucks come down the street and you've got flooding going on, this is the solution here. And having these resources in place to a larger extent than we have now. We have three crews right now. We want to go to 5 and possibly 6 in the future. That's the proposal. So a lot more ditch maintenance crews, a lot more jet factor pipe cleaning crews. This is how to keep that old system clean and operational for the big rainfall events. Just another breakdown of some of those staff members that are going to be a big part of the enhanced level of service that we talked about, that we'll share more with City Council in the budget process. Equipment operators, field staff, and then some stormwater utility staff to help schedule and plan that work. The middle board there, talking about the initial neighborhood projects that are part of this first proposal of the stormwater utility, 6 different projects spread out throughout the city pretty spatially. It is something that we want to utilize about $1.5 million for next year in terms of the stormwater utility. So we're excited at the prospect of getting some of these projects underway and completed so that where we've got these problems, we can make some progress towards solutions. I talked about the $25 million of amortized bond money. That's the board over here. Those projects identified through that ranking system I'm going to talk about in a minute. The stormwater plan for the future calls for an annual neighborhood drainage project budget line item every year of about $1 million. So that's what we're talking about on the bottom in terms of the plus. So each year, we'd be able to get out and do a $50,000 or $100,000 pipe project in the neighborhood, because sometimes those can be some of the most impactful projects we can do, as well as the larger scale amortized funding that we're talking about as part of the green board over there. A lot of discussion was had that if we're going to have projects identified for funding, what's going to be the process in which we're going to go about doing that? So we put together a ranking matrix, and that ranking matrix was used to evaluate projects against one another by these criteria to decide which projects qualify, so to speak, by criteria for implementation in kind of initial tier, second tier, third tier. So the project list that's on the back there on the board that's going to be part of the bond went through this process. And certainly the really large projects that are on there didn't necessarily qualify for the $25 million, but where the funding and the project cost and the ranking all coincided, that's what resulted in that list coming together. But once again, we're trying to be transparent, we're trying to be forthcoming with how we're doing this. And one of the things that was talked about by the focus group of citizens that we put together in August and September was be transparent with that process and help people understand how you're identifying projects, the schedule in which they're going to be done, and then track the progress of those projects getting done so that people can see, you know, kind of from start to finish how you're going about that process. So obviously creating some type of online viewer for people to monitor how those projects are going to be identified, executed, completed, and so on is going to be an important part of the future stormwater program. If this ask of the city is going to truly be one that everyone's supportive of, we want to have that transparency. Stormwater utility billing, the long and short of it is that just like water, sewer, and sanitation are utility charges that we have in the city, stormwater will be the 4th charge on your bi-monthly utility bill that you get. Stormwater is a static charge, like sanitation, so it won't change. Water and sewer, of course, changes based on the meter read, but sanitation and stormwater would be static charges for the customers. And if you had a credit, the credit would be, of course, accounted for within the bill, and you would get the net amount owed once the credits were applied. We talked about the fact that the revenues that come in for stormwater would be dedicated to stormwater purposes only. We would not be buying fire trucks. We would not be putting recreational complexes together. We would be paying for stormwater services and tackling the maintenance and capital project needs that have been identified. The first billing is scheduled for July 1st of 2026, but that once again is a proposal. The City Council will give us direction on the proposal and the timing and the schedule and all those different aspects of it as they go forward with their deliberations the 17th of November, the 25th of November, and the 11th of December. Just a few key points here. We, the staff, believe that stormwater user fees are a more fair and equitable way in which to recover the cost of stormwater services from customers than taxation. The predictable, stable revenue source allows us to set up an annual program on the maintenance and capital side that we feel will be more responsive to what the issues are in the community. And once again, moving this maintenance exercise, which is extensive from that list of infrastructure that I showed earlier, trying to become more proactive as the system ages and rainfall intensity seems to be creating issues for us with the older systems. Here is the schedule. We talked about this already a little bit. November 17th, November 25th, December 11th. And then first 2 quarters of next year, more outreach in the community, dealing with credits, talking to customers, planning on sending out a postcard. I talked to everybody about this the other day. Taking all the accounts that would have a stormwater charge and sending a postcard out, I want to say March time frame, that would say to that customer, this is your account, this is your address, this is your fee as proposed under the program, so that if there were questions that needed to come in as a result of that postcard going out, we could deal with those before an official bill went out July 1st time frame. Once again, if that is the wishes of City Council relative to the proposal that is going to be put before them in the coming weeks. So that's all my questions. I have one more slide here. There's other stormwater utilities in the area. There's 75 in the state, 2,100 in the country. But Garden City, Richmond Hill, Brunswick, Hinesville, Augusta, Statesboro, Valdosta. I think Hinesville's been going on since like 2007, Garden City since 2010. So it's not a new concept, it's a different concept, but it's not new. And some of our neighboring jurisdictions have been at it for a good while. And I think overall, in talking with those communities, there is certainly a support for enhanced stormwater program resources to deal with issues. Last thing I'll show is, if you can see, these are some example bills. We talked about the proportionality of different types of sites relative to one another. A large industrial warehouse site, being 500 times the amount of impervious area, so correspondingly the bill is that much larger. Shopping centers, truck container storage yards, that's a relatively low taxable value, but a large amount of runoff. So, a truck container yard paying $1,900 a month, once again, accounts for the impact they're having when those rainfall events occur on a 10, 20 acre container yard. So, once again, just showing the relative fee ratios of one type of customer to the next. And I think that's all I've got. So, not too bad, about 30 minutes. I can certainly take questions now from anyone who has one. Breaking out to talk to our staff about the capital projects. Ed and Mike in the back can talk to you about your parcel, your neighborhood, your business in terms of what your fee would be. They have all that data there. Ann is in the back of the room to talk about water conservation, rain barrels, and general education on water issues. I will be here just milling about if you want to come and talk to me about any questions or share any thoughts about this proposal. There's several city council members here. You can certainly share with them your thoughts about the proposal. But I'm trying to be, as once again, forthcoming and transparent about what we're going to be proposing to city council in the coming weeks so that they and you all can see what has been put together over these last many months in an effort to address the identified needs that have come out within the community. So, any thoughts from our elected officials in the room? Mr. Mayor, you joined us. Any thoughts you want to share with us, sir, before we look at projects and bills and such?
Sure. Good evening, everybody, and we appreciate being here. Appreciate Alderwoman Wilder Bryant hosting us. This is a event that's going around the city, really just communicating on what our needs are. We have two choices. We can plan appropriately to address things before they happen to us, or we can wonder what happens when it happens to us. I will tell you, and many folks know, is probably Ron to tell you, it's been flooding here since August. I mean, that is just a nature of where we live. And for us, herein lies, and for us, it was, remember that it was a city council meeting we had at the school board building. And we were in this meeting, and it started pouring down raining while we were in the meeting. We didn't realize that we were actually in the meeting.
November 7th last year.
Thank you. And so while we were in the meeting, we started to get texts and calls and pictures of saying, Evan, Lasseter from the Morning News, sent somebody a picture just showing that there were cars that were moving. We were in the building, we're not aware that this was going on. And the fact is, when it used to rain really, really hard and really, really fast, we had structural flooding, all kinds of things happen. Now we recognize that we don't flood as much, and we know that once our system catches up, we're able to move the water. But we have a stormwater system that is, by and large, hugely antiquated. And so we can do it bit by bit, or we can be very proactive about it and have a dedicated funding source to not only have the equipment, the staff. I think Ron did a great job of talking about what general fund is and how we address the issue of general fund, but creating an enterprise fund which takes the stormwater utility out of that as its own dedicated funds, ensures that we have not only the personnel, but also the equipment and the technology that we need to be able to make the needed improvements as we go on. Some of you might remember some years ago in Atlanta, they kept kicking down the issue of their sewer, and then basically the sewer almost blew up. And then all of a sudden, now you had to have a lot of money to be able to do that. Taxes had to go up in order for them to address that. We don't want to do that. We feel it can be very incremental. We actually created the Stormwater Utility last year and asked the city manager to go and let's talk about ways of funding it. So as Ron said, they've taken an extremely long amount of time of really being very meticulous about how we fund it. The good news is that we were able to reduce your millage. We have not reduced your millage in the last 6 years I've been mayor. We have not raised it, we reduced it twice. And SPLOST just passed. So this creates an opportunity for us to do a couple of things. I think they're proposing to start collecting in July or June, second half of next year.
For the stormwater fee,
Right,
if it's the wishes of the council.
so that it helps people get used to it. But again, this is a much more proactive, much more thoughtful, much more balanced approach of being able to address this system. We don't want to inherit the same system that was passed on to us. And so just like you do preventive maintenance on a car because you don't want what happens when it blows up or whatever, we want to do the same thing for our system. How many miles of stormwater we have system?
416 miles of pipe from here to Richmond.
Right. That's a lot of miles. And so you have to look at you. So we have to always keep fixing. So we have some of the best water professionals in the country here in Savannah. We're really blessed to have them And then again, any question about this, how much water we pump a day? And I know you know, when we had the water thing. Somebody knew, it was
I think Zach may know
Right.
the pump station's
Yeah.
capacity, I'm not.
it was a lot of water. And we do this every single day. And so, you know, we want to be very thoughtful. We said we'll be the council of making some of these hard but necessary decisions. And again, the $4 that most residents will pay a month is way better ultimately than putting it in a property, in a sale, a property tax, but a millage rate that everybody has to pay. You know, just.
Well, when you bring the stormwater fee into play, just like everyone pays for water and sewer, all properties that contribute runoff, tax exempt, would pay this user fee for stormwater, just like they pay user fees for water and sewer.
Although they'll pay
And we've
for
got about 15 to 20% of the parcels in the city of Savannah, which is a high percentage, are tax exempt. So,
And y'all know why, right? High rates of churches and educational institutions and all of those types of things that contribute. Government buildings, we have a bunch of government buildings around too. And so that's not money we're able to collect. Fees, everybody pays. Taxes, everybody doesn't. So this is much more equitable across the board.
the users of the system pay their fair share, all users.
So thank you, Ron. Thank you, team. We really appreciate all of you.
So anyway,
Good job, thank you, sir.
questions? Sure.
I'm just grateful that the squash was approved.
Yes.
And so I'm just wanting to make sure that there isn't any Interpol secrets that when we do roll this out, if it's approved, that we will have some type of similarly a maintenance plan that residents can go and see when their ditch is going to be cleaned. Because a lot of times the problems that we have is because people don't know when those ditches are going to get cleaned. And we haven't been, we talk about good government, we need to have clean ditches. And I think this is going to be an excellent mechanism to make sure that some of the calls that we get about our ditches hadn't been cleaned in a while, they will have some kind of mechanism on our maybe city government channel.
Well,
to-
yeah, the government channel, but also the city website, because the strategic plan
Yeah, the
exercise,
website. Yeah, the
GPS
website.
that the assistant city manager, Ms. Young, is focused on. One of the things that we are being tasked with as departments is to provide data to the strategic plan team so that they can then do dashboards. And those dashboards are going to show work activities scheduled and completed by service center. So Kimon, who's here with us tonight, she's our special projects person. Her job is going to be to compile that data from water, sewer, stormwater, report it to the strategic planning team. They're then going to have the dashboards where people can go in and see linear foot of pipe, ditches, catch basins, all that kind of activity on an ongoing basis, so that there is a real-time reporting of what we're doing. So that's part of the city strategy overall, and obviously water will be a player in that.
And I have two other questions. One of them is I want you to make sure I was liable to explain what a static fee means. Like
Well, static fee is sanitation. We pay a set charge every month for sanitation.
Well, I have a question that different because
Okay.
my sanitation fee differs. It's not set. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about is this $4.75, this $4.75. It's not going to be a flat fee. Isn't it a formula to that really determines how much the fee is going to be?
No.
It's going to
It's
be-
what, so my house on Gordon Street will fall into that tier 2. So my stormwater fee every month will be $4.75 every month. Now, we bill every other month, so obviously it'll be $9.50 every 2 months. But my stormwater fee, 6 bills a year, $9.50 a month, at $9.50 a billing cycle, will not change.
Okay.
So my house on Gordon Street falls within that tier 2.
That's all I have. Thank you for explaining
Okay.
We got a question right here.
Sure.
Is it the responsibility of the property owner to bring forth possible credit things that has to do with their property.
Yes, it is. And I liken that to the homestead exemption. You know, the homestead exemption is out there for you as a property owner, you know, in terms of going down to the tax office to do that. Stormwater credits similarly are something that you identify as an opportunity for you as the customer in this case to come to us and say, I have a rain garden or I have a rain barrel or whatever the eligible credit is that you can apply for. And we actually have a copy of the credit manual somewhere floating around in draft, but there's an application, you can do things online, do some different things like that in order to apply for that credit. And it's not going to be some complicated, you know, for residents, it's not going to be a complicated, you know, labor-intensive exercise to get residential credits. If you have an eligible activity or mechanism on your property, then you would probably be able to get the credit pretty easily. If you have a detention pond at a warehouse, you're going to have to demonstrate that that is properly designed, constructed, and maintained in order to achieve the credit and then retain it, because improperly operating detention ponds can actually be worse than not having a pond at all. So once again, more complex for the non-residential, but the residential customers hopefully can work through that more straightforward. Well, there's all different ones. I want to say a rain barrel was a 20% credit. Who's got the credit name? Somebody does. A percentage of the bill, so 20% off of that 475. Clarice, do you guys have the stormwater? Is it in the accordion folder somewhere?
All around the house.
Yeah.
The problem I have is the runoff that comes into affected my house is from a major well. So it comes down on the skidway and it floods my place. So how do you account for that kind of?
Well, what we have to do as the city with Skidaway Road is we have to work with you and the other property owners in that area to not discharge our road right-of-way stormwater runoff onto your private property. And what we have to do is get together with you and find a project that's going to fix that, because we should not have stormwater runoff inundating private property and apparently causing an issue at your property.
I've been talking to Mr. Hoffman through email.
Okay.
And without knowing and looking at what project you already have, that wherever our houses are on 42nd Street, I don't think there are any of the drainage.
The gutters?
The
gutters?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything like that. And it just comes running off the skidaway like a river.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got the foundation people coming to my house, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of damage done because of the runoff.
Well, we've got to come up with a remedy for that situation. If you could talk to our folks over here, I'd like to get more details on that location and then have someone come out and get a field assessment of that. Because a curb and gutter system is not hard to install, but they can be effective in redirecting the water away from your property or down the road as opposed to on your property.
Well, the problem, and I don't mean to monopolize this, but the problem is there's a alleyway in the back, and there's a gas station, and then there's a laundromat. And the way they have their parking lots coming, plus the skidaway, it all just filters down that back alleyway. And then it just...
Out into the road then?
And it just disperses into everybody's yard.
Have you guys had any awareness of that one?
Yeah, we do. We just
All right,
have,
well, you all just need to get together and you know, let's come up with a plan there to deal with that can get that water directed to the right location and not into these private yards. Okay.
Question about preventative maintenance. You and Mayor Johnson talked about preventative maintenance and forward that's what we need to do. I've been a facilities manager for many years now, and we have the game plan that's usually 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years even in the future. And that's for maintenance, repairs, replacement when things expire. And I'm wondering, why are we only now to the point of being more proactive about this?
Well, I came here 3 years ago, and one of the missions I had, because I have worked with these types of utilities in the past, including Garden City, where I used to be the city manager. We had a stormwater utility there. They said, when I came to work, we want to explore the stormwater utility like you all have in Garden City, because we think it's a tool that could be helpful to Savannah. So what we've been doing over these last few years is putting together a list of needs and then identifying kind of systematically how we would go about addressing those needs through a plan of this type. And we've already started to do some of the work in terms of the ditch maintenance. That's been something we're really ramped up as a high priority. But now we've got to catalog, if you will, the different maintenance projects and needs that we have into kind of an asset management type approach, where we're fixing the most critical first and ensuring that, you know, the consequence of failure is factored in.
My question is we've been paying taxes to, you know, maintain these systems over the past 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Why have they not been maintained to the standards that should be applied?
Well, I don't know that they haven't been maintained to the
Well,
standard.
Mayor Johnson said himself that they're antiquated. So.
Well, they're antiquated because a lot of those systems are very old. So what we're finding is
This is true, but They
deterioration.
should be replaced over the years. You know, you do a section of the city this year, you do a section of the city next year. That should have all been planned with the taxpayer.
Let me help with that. Because I've been around for a while. Council didn't want to touch that because the fact is, you have to pay for it.
Oh, yeah.
Through taxes or through fees. And our citizens were telling us, don't raise our taxes.
Right.
So,
But they want water.
well, that's right, and they want services.
And they want storm
So,
drains.
so you're looking for ways of driving your millage rate down.
Right.
Which, you know, the ground, anything under the ground is not sexy. People don't want to see that under there, and so they don't.
What I'm saying is, instead of all the different SLOSS things and millage things and everything else, why don't we just integrate this into our normal taxes that we pay?
Well, because again, then we could, but again, that also results ultimately in increasing your millage rates, if you're going to incorporate it. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars ultimately over time of everything that needs to be done. And it still does not get to the point of a dedicated fund for this, because the problem with councils, the problem with politics is, you know, water drain should be political. That's right. And so, you know, for some councils it'll be a high priority, and for some it won't be. And so then what ends up happening is, you know, it's ineffective, it's uneven, and it's inefficient. And so in this way, and again, I think, you know, I pledged we were going to be the council making some hard decisions. And so now we have the right people in place. We have the right council in place to say, we're not going to kick the can down the road any longer. And we're going to go ahead and do what should have been done really a long time ago. Yeah, we just didn't have that. There was just no appetite for it. People just did not want to hear anything about, let's create a separate fee with taxes high. Our taxes are now the lowest they've been since 1987. So for us, this is probably a good time. Now, our millage is great. Your taxes may not be because your valuation probably is going up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question related to the way that you established this, and it's based on your coverage, your four-tier.
For residential.
That's right. Commercial, industrial, and we certainly have a different, and I have some interest in how you calculated that as well. But at the same time that you're doing this and establishing this system, we also approved a density bonus for affordable housing in some of the areas most detrimentally affected by stormwater runoff and street flooding. We are also in the midst of updating our comprehensive plan. What you didn't talk about is adjustment to land use and right sizing either the stormwater system or the density of development across the jurisdiction. Also to the point about right sizing, you kept talking about how this is just like water and sewer, except it's not. It has pipes like water and sewer, but I don't think you went big enough. Other large jurisdictions in flood-prone zones have conservancy districts because everything that happens in unincorporated Chatham also ultimately happens in Savannah and Bullock County and Bryan County. And with all the development we have, those canals and every drop, you know, I don't have to tell you how stormwater works. We just didn't go through that lesson tonight. But I think you owe a deeper conversation about that going forward. I don't think that this approach is wrong. I don't think you right-sized it. I don't think you made it big enough. And you didn't talk about the other jurisdictional elements that should be involved and the outreach that's happened to this point about that.
I agree with you on the land use issue. Land use is obviously a huge factor towards hydrologic response of a watershed. And the best stormwater system in the world with kind of an out-of-control land use plan that doesn't mesh with it and work with it, you could be making investments that could otherwise become obsolete. So to your point, it is going to be important that my sister department that deals with zoning, land use, that kind of area of the city operation, that there is consideration for the infrastructure aspects of what land use decisions are being made. Now, the stormwater ordinances are getting more and more complex and robust to handle different types of land uses, but there is a tipping point. I agree with you. And we have to be cognizant of that as part of this overall plan. Otherwise, it can't work as effectively and successfully as we would want it by not having those two things in communication.
Well, and you did touch on the complexity of the different colors of money and how this is going to be an all-hands approach. What you didn't talk about is impact fees for people out in West Chatham and what they're experiencing out there with the mixed residential and commercial and industrial growth, and how those impact fees wave into this. You didn't touch on it.
Impact fee, we're not charging an impact fee for any water-related service.
Why not?
You know, impact fee, well, what did you say?
We chose not to.
Well, that's true. And the history of impact fees for drainage in Georgia is a long one. And it goes all the way back to the folks in Cherokee County, Georgia, who kind of did the first set of impact fees. Drainage is a difficult concept to say that the level of service is, well defined. And then you can pay for the incremental aspect of what you cause in an impact fee.
No. We saw your tier.
No. The tier is the breakdown of the parcels. But the adequacy of the drainage system and its level of service is very hard to correlate, different than public safety and transportation. Transportation level of service on a road is very well defined and easy to calculate. Drainage systems are a little bit different. I actually don't know of any impact fees being charged for drainage in the state of Georgia. If you're aware of one, I'd be curious to know.
Not in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, okay, so we're on the same page there. Any other questions before you check on your bills and other stuff? Certainly talk to our friends over here about project, I'm sorry?
I said, which bill? You get more and more.
Well, it'll be part of your utility bill, so this is the same bill but a new charge. Capital projects over here, please talk to Barry and Aja and Daryl. They can certainly answer any questions there. I'm going to stay and talk more with anyone who would like to have further discussion. Thank you all for coming out tonight and for your questions and thoughts.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.